Hello, and welcome to another one of these planning meetings talking about the keys from our book, Try This. And today we're going to be looking in detail at key number 9. If you go to the Try This website and you go to the resources section, there is a drop-down menu, and on that menu is resources for the different keys. And if you locate the key study an image and you look for the example called evacuees, there's a page, and on that page is a link to the photograph that we're going to be using. So if you fancy having a go at this particular example, then it's quite easy to locate the picture, and that's what it looks like. There it is in its loveliness. Um, so, as you may or may not know, in the early years of the Second World War, children were evacuated from cities in Britain, from the big cities, because of the fear of bombing, and were relocated into the countryside. And these children were called evacuees. And here is a photograph of a group of evacuees. And all I'd ask you to do, this is how the key starts, with an image, a little bit of context, not very much. And the first question is, what do you notice? So I'm going to hand it over to the three of you, really, to just start noticing things. What can you see? Sorry, John, you'll
You're
have to
muted.
turn your mic on, mate.
The boy just right of centre at the back, sort of there-ish,
Yeah,
has got this real scowl
he has, hasn't he?
on his face,
Yeah.
as does the boy down right, immediately in front of him. He's got that kind of come on then, which
Yeah.
is half scowl but half fear for
Ah,
me.
now, go on. Say a bit more about that.
Um, the boy at the back is just looking, and I just think he's challenging. The boy at the front, for me, I can feel his concern,
Mm.
which I would describe as a moment of fear. There he is with his socks and
Okay.
his, and his piece of paper and the rucksack
Mm.
half off his shoulder, and it spells fear to me.
Right. And they're both of them looking directly into the camera, aren't they? It's I mean, there are other people looking directly into the camera as well. Yeah. What else? What else can
I've
people
looked at
see?
this I've looked at this photo a number of times, but something about what John just said made me notice how everybody's mouth, just about everybody's mouth, is quite set and straight. There's almost quite a lot of similarity, even though the facial expressions are really different. There's quite a lot of similarity in the shape of the mouth, and it's quite a set, what I would call a set,
Yeah,
you
that's what I
know.
wanted to say, but I didn't know the word for that. Because you know,
Mm,
when we feel nervous, I mean, it's natural. Like I actually, when I feel nervous, I pull my lower lip, like,
mm,
mhm. And yeah, and the children, they don't smile at all. No.
mm. There's no smiles. Mm.
So there are a number of, well, hundreds of photographs of evacuees, and the reason that this one caught my eye was I was kind of looking. The first time I used this photograph in a class was many years ago, for the purpose of introducing evacuees, and I was doing some research and looking through, as you do through Google Image, for something that you can use. And this one jumped out at me straight away. It was partly to do with the boy that you identified, John, at the front, with this kind of look on his face. It's it's an ambiguous look, isn't it? And there's a lot going on there. So that was the first reason. The second reason was that most of the photographs, if not all of the other photographs that I saw, were of children leaving in trains, and they were smiling and laughing and waving, and it was quite a you know an incongruous kind of, it kind of didn't sit with me, that. And I wondered whether the reason that the children were waving and smiling in those photographs is because they were starting what they thought was going to be an adventure and getting on a train and, going away. At that point might have felt like an adventure, and the cameras were there and there was press and everything. But I wonder what part, what happened was that the evacuees were their parents were contacted by the government, and the government told them that they were going to need to go and, evacuate to another part of the country. And then they kind of were told, that they could only take what they could carry. And then the day came, and I just wonder what part of the day you think this is. Is this for you? I mean, I've got no idea, by the way. I'm not trying to trying to guess what's in my head, but genuinely, I'm quite interested in what part of the day you think this is.
For me, it looks like the morning.
Could you say a bit more about that, Natalia?
I don't know why, probably because of the light, which is at the back. At the back where the bricks are. And the children, like, they do not look tired, because I think at the end they're about, like, they have different age, but probably it's from 5 up to 9 or 11. So they do not look tired. I mean, as probably they may in the evening.
They're very.
Yeah, good. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, this is a different. Sorry, I'm responding to something different because I'm still looking.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I've noticed how the hands. I've seen one hand that isn't a fist, but all the other hands, for reasons that some of them are holding things, but still, it's noticeable. And I've kind of made a story in my head about those two bigger kids at the back. There's one, he's not smiling exactly, but he's looking down and his friend's showing him something. And I was thinking how bravado, that those young ones are not bothering to display bravado, but those two older ones, there's something social going on there, that it's very important to sort of interact with your peers and maybe show a bit of bravado. I don't think any of our front group are thinking about their peers at all. They seem like they're queued up together, but they seem very alone somehow, don't they?
Yeah. John, have you got something else?
I was just looking at the boxes that they're carrying. I happen to know that boxes like that carry gas masks,
right,
for evacuees, and it just seems so fragile. Like the children are so, especially the gang at the front are so fragile and ready for the taking.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are wearing their boxes around their neck, and they're very close up to their faces, aren't they? Don't seem to be designed for wearing around your neck, more for carrying. But the ones who put them around their neck, it's like they can't forget about the fact they've got it. They're literally in their face.
It's like they will have practiced putting the bloody things on, weren't they?
Yeah.
They will have been told to try them on and make sure that they know how to use them. And they will have. I'm old enough to have had one of those at my parents' home years and years and years ago, and they smell rubbery
Mm.
inside.
Mhm.
That was from the Second World
Mhm.
War, and they smell of, well, I can smell the rubber, and I don't like it.
No.
No, they wouldn't have liked it, would they?
No.
I mean, if they didn't understand the whole story around it, that's a kind of sensory yuck. And they would have picked up the energy of the yuck, the other kinds of yuck that go with it. The girl with the beret also looks like she has a label on. It's tucked in behind our boy at the front,
Right.
but it looks like she's got a label around her neck, a paper label on a string. That's
Yeah.
I suppose it's no different from a modern ID, but there's something about being labeled that's a little bit depersonalizing.
I think both of the girls have got labels. It's just that the other one's tucked inside her coat, and the other
Oh
one's
yes,
hanging
I
down.
see it. Wow. Yeah.
Oh,
So I think-
there's only 2 girls. There's only 2 girls. I don't
Oh,
just clock.
true. Yeah, there are only 2 girls.
Yeah. So if you
And they've got
were
the same shoes.
go on, what were you saying, Viv? What was that?
They got the same shoes.
Yeah. So if you were standing where the camera person is, and you were looking at these children, and it was your job to find them homes, imagine that this is the part of the story where the train's just arrived and they've just got off the train, and you're looking at these children, and our job is to find them homes. Which of these children would cause you the most concern? Which of these would be ones that you'd think, oh, I've got to keep an eye on them?
As in, I might not be able to find them a home, or as in, I think they might be troubled.
Anything. You're scanning their faces, and you just make a mental note for whatever reason. It may be, like you say, it may be it's going to be hard to find him or her a home, or you might think, oh, I'm going to keep a close eye on her or him for whatever reason.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, and I should be being more polite, but it's because I'm engaged. I think girls would be easy to place. Like, people will take girls. They think they'll be gentle and sweet, and so I'm not worried about the girl. I'm worried about the girls. Of course, I'm worried about the girls, but I'm not worried about placing the girls.
Right. What about yourself, John? Is anybody there that if you were, I'm talking about if you were a billeting officer, somebody whose job it was to find who you might be concerned by?
Those who don't meet my eyes,
Right.
that whole business of looking at each other and being confident enough to look at each other. I think eye contact is such a measure of what we do and who we are and where we are, how we live, and so that would be something that I, as a billeting officer, I would be looking at the way they react in that kind of way, and yes, I would perhaps make the same assumption, Viv, that you've just made about girls don't bother us and how wrong I could be.
Beautifully put, John.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to remember that phrase, those that don't meet my eyes. It's just gone straight into me when you said that.
What about yourself, Natalia? Anybody there that worries
Well,
you?
actually, I mean, it's so sad. Look at this photo. And probably it's the girl on the left, who's wearing a kind of a trench, like a coat. I don't know why, but she looks so miserable, and the other girl, she looks so neat. I mean, well dressed with this berry and the haircut. But this, the other girl, she's so, I don't know, she's like a sparrow, you know. Yeah, and probably, of course, the boy, who's in front, because his eyes, like, I don't know, he's like in, I don't know, like in morning, like he's really sad.
Mm.
And because of probably of this, I don't know, what is that, like craft paper, like it's not a bag,
Mm.
something which is wrapped inside. Everybody has got the boxes, but he's got this, I don't know, in Russian it's kind of, we call it svertak, but it's like something when you just, like something wrapped.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something sad about that little wrapped thing, isn't there? It's not, it's somehow
Like,
a little bit disheveled and yeah.
like when you marry and you just wrap something and give, probably,
Yeah.
or probably the supply of these things in box wasn't enough, so they had to find something for him to give.
And there's something about the way he stands with his shoulder. I know he's holding his bag, but he's got his, the way he's got his, he's like a, I can't decide whether he's sagged or whether he's like a coiled spring, but he's very tense. And at the same time, he seems much less strong and capable than the little boy next to him, who I think, you know, he'll get in there and help with the cows and whatever else. But this little one on the left, he just seems vulnerable.
Yeah, the other one looks much
And
more
maybe
like those pictures you see of soldiers or sailors, you know, when they've got their kit bag and
yeah,
sort of got it over his shoulder.
yeah,
And he's going, "Oh,
yeah.
bring it on! I'll take him on." He's more that.
He appears to be, doesn't he? I'm very aware it's a moment in time, and in the next second, his little face might crumple, and the other guy might do a big beaming smile. So it's a
Yeah.
moment in time, but
Yeah.
it speaks. It really speaks.
Yeah.
And there's care in those knitted socks. You know, I'm a knitter, and I know it takes a lot to knit socks like that. So those long socks with the little diamonds on, I feel a bit better seeing those on him because someone's made those and someone's knitted the jersey he's wearing, and that takes a bit, even back then when every sock was hand knitted. Yeah,
Someone
I feel better about it.
Someone cares about him, but someone's going to miss him as well.
Oh, stop! You're going to have me in tears.
I always, when I think about this subject, I always think, you know, what did their parents say to them to explain it to them, particularly the little ones. You know, how did they? When I've done this with school kids in class, the question that I always ask is, if you were the parent, would you lie? Would you say something? We talk about the concept of a white lie, you know, a lie for, you know, that's a good lie, if you like, a lie that you'd say because for a good reason, and that they have some very interesting answers to that. How do you feel yourselves? Would you think it's a time that you justify a white lie?
I'm finding somewhere to keep them. I'm not letting them go. I'm hiding them and bugging the government. And then the other half of my head is, what about the danger of keeping them? What a fool I am. And am I being selfish by keeping them? Should I let them go?
Right.
So I'd be like that.
I honestly think that the way we parent is so different in today's world that we couldn't conceive of our children being away from their parents. You know, I can imagine that children today, hearing about evacuees and thinking about it, would just think that was terrible, because the unity of the family and the mum particularly unit is considered so central to childhood. But it wasn't the same even when I was a child, and that generation before, which is what this photo shows. It wasn't quite such a, I mean, it was a huge schism, but it wasn't such a thing to spend time away from your parents, get on a train, go and do something. In terms of lying, yeah, it's a hard one. I think there's one point of view, which is that if you added a kind of fake smile and a lie and a nice story to this, you would just further confuse that child and give the whole thing a sense of surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I've always hated that movie, This Beautiful Life, or whatever it's called, where the father spends the whole war lying to the child. I've always hated that. It actually, even thinking about it, makes me feel sick, because as a child, this is a personal thing, but as a child, I couldn't stand it when people didn't tell me the truth. It felt like reality breaking down. So that bothers me, that idea. But how you tell the truth is very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Natalia?
Well, yeah, as a mother of three, I think, like, of course, I mean, for me, it's always to tell the truth. I think when you're frank with your children, you have better connection and relationship. And actually, um, I don't think that such events as war, some kind of disasters, need to be wrapped with white line. I think we have a kind of trouble, and you need to explain why you do this or that. But at the same time, you need to explain that nothing will change your love relationship, and you find a way to be together.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, somehow to find the ways to be connected. Yeah, I would say that probably that time, yeah, of course, the children didn't have this social media. Yeah, probably even the posts couldn't work well at the time. So, of course, it was hard for parents to explain the things.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
now you can find, yeah, at least you may find people who may know something in different countries. But that time it was really, I don't know how to call it. It's not even sad. It's just the drastic things. I mean, when you had to leave your children, and the same happened in Russia. Children were evacuated to Uzbekistan or to some other countries. So yeah, the same events happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, the west of the Soviet Union was invaded. So, you know, and terrible things happened in there. So this takes on a whole other poignancy. If you look at obviously if you look at it through the Russian experience of the war.
Yeah, actually, and I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I live in Leningrad. I'm sorry. Okay, Tim, your turn.
Carry on.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to say that, like, for me, it's kind of personal thing, because I live in Kaliningrad. It's a former Königsberg. It's the German. It was the German land, and I live in a German house, actually, which was built in 1901. And of course, I know this story when, after the Second World War, the German children were evacuated back to Germany, to other parts of, I mean, France, to Italy, and it's also really sad. I mean, of course, like, Soviet Union was a kind of a winner, but I mean, people had to leave their houses and flats. And I remember my grandmother was talking about the time when they had to live together with German people, with children. But children could find common language really easy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, this key is just the example that we're looking at is just just one example of how to use this key. And if you look at the workshop that we did with New Zealand, you'll see a completely different key in a completely different context and a completely different moment in time. But we're just about to move on to the next step in the sequence. But just before we do that, just a couple of things really. The first is there anything else in the photograph that we've missed that people would like to talk about? Anything else that they've noticed? There's one thing I've always assumed is that it's in a schoolyard, and I've got no reason to think that, but I just think it just feels to me like it's in a schoolyard. Is that do other people made that assumption?
I assumed a railway station.
Ah,
Yeah, me too.
you did,
Yes,
yeah.
and I was seeing the departure from home as opposed to the arrival that
Yeah,
you were
I
seeing.
was too.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So
But I can understand that if you saw a lot of waving photos, that this you must have, yeah, that if you saw a whole lot of photos and this one as part of it, I can imagine that would change the context.
I've got no reason to think that at all. None at all. I mean, I know this was a photograph I know that was in a newspaper. I know that. That's one thing I know. But I don't know at what time of the day it was taken. And one of the reasons I asked you was because in my head, as you do, we all do this, don't we? Is we make stories. We can't help ourselves. And so this photo, I've got a story in this photo of my story of this photograph is that it's at the other end and that they're being met by the placement people. And that's why that lad's got a look.
Yeah, I seem to remember from the title of the image when we were putting it in the book that the newspaper article is about the arrival of refugees. You know, it focuses on the arrival, so it could be that too. It was something about, you know, yeah. I think the title and the article talk about the refugees arriving. So I wonder if that's informed that as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yes, just to kind of talk, the second part of what I was going to say is, and Viv, you'll help me out here, is just to talk about the way that this key works, is that you've got an image, and I gave you a tiny little bit of context because I didn't really. Yeah. It was just enough, really, just to kind of fix it in time, but no more than that. And then the first kind of task is the what do you notice? And Viv, as I said this morning, when I experienced it from the other side, it was quite a different experience. So could you perhaps talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yeah, I was just going to jump in and say before we go on to step 2, could we, because we do this a bit, don't we, John? We do what we'd never do in a classroom, which is we stop and think about what just happened as teachers, because I don't know how the two of you feel, but I felt my investment grow a lot as I've looked at this photo before, but I haven't been, as it were, a participant. And I'm just sort of thinking about how Tim did that with us. And you didn't tell us that much at first, Tim. You did give us real time, like it's now 40 minutes almost, maybe 30 minutes of looking at an image, and that without getting really a whole lot more background information than just that it was what it was. So did you two notice the kind of questions that were asked or the things that weren't done? Because I think that's as important at this key as what was done. Any comments on that, John?
Yes. I'm always taken by the freedom that Tim gives us to ponder, and to support and not interfere with what we're saying. And I find that very helpful to remind myself of me in the classroom. Shut up, John. Listen. Shut up, John. Look. Shut up, John. Shut up. You know. But then be friendly, but shut up a bit.
Yeah. So there was lots of holding back going on, and I found you took us away from the photos, but also brought us back to the photo. You asked us a more conceptual picture about a question about what time of day we thought it was, but also you kept bringing, and you invited people to reflect on personal links they were making. Latalia had, you know, and as a child in the classroom, children often have this really strong personal connection, and often it stays inside, but it's really important to give that space. And each time then you would bring us back to the buttons and the box, or you didn't, but you'd bring us back to the photo. So the photo is like an anchor, I think. And the other thing that Tim was doing was inviting us to notice, not instead of, but notice details, instead of telling too many stories with it. So you'll have noticed that he was inviting us. He used that really fantastic question, what do you notice? Which is very different from what do you think is going on here, or what's the story. Or so that what that does is train us to look at the set of the mouth and the eyes and the boxes and the fragility, and actually children will do the same thing. They will look in much finer detail than if they're asked to go straight to inference. There's like a first step before inference, which is detailing. And I really noticed hard. So yeah, Tim, as always, the experience of being at this end of it, it's quite a revelation. And it's a revelation because it's emotional. Like, I really feel quite emotional about this picture. And I know that as a teacher, you don't quite get that. So yeah, it happened. It definitely happened. We care, we're invested, which is what this is all about. And that's come from time, from questioning, and like you said, John, the freedom to meeting make. This picture does show some real children and some real things happening, but we're also making our own meaning. That little girl is a little sparrow. That one, those ones at the back have got bravado. You know, we're making meaning. So yeah.
I can also add that I really like Tim's questions because you don't say just yes or right. It's not about checking knowledge, but it's about precisely noticing. I think it's a really good skill just to look and notice and not to judge, because sometimes, yeah, when you look, think like, I think this child is sad because, but I think even I was wrong. I do not have to judge the feeling. I can see just that the mouth, yeah, is like the mouth is going down, so probably the child feels, but yeah, sad or something. Yeah, so I think it's a really good skill just to notice. I see. It's not what I think or what in my imagination, probably.
And if children jump to the imagining and the storytelling, we can bring them back. So we use expressions. You'll see this in other videos. We use expressions like, so what is it about the face that's making you say that? And sometimes children struggle, but it's amazing how quickly they learn to do that. And then by learning to describe detail, they're learning to talk like artists do, like writers do. So, you know, a quality writer isn't going to say the little boy stood on the station platform, he was angry. A quality writer is going to say his brows lowered and his chin dropped and his little hand formed a fist. So children learn to express and use the language that writers and artists use. I think I've seen it over and over again watching Tim teach, and it's really powerful.
There's a couple of other things
going on.
yeah, but there's a couple of other things, which is, if people see the two workshops that we've done on this key, if you take a look at the photograph that Viv chose, it's much more enigmatic. It's not an easy photograph to work out what's going on. You have to work an awful lot harder to try and make meaning out of it. And you know, there's a lot more. What is that? And there's something there, and just kind of trying to draw details out and doing that kind of detective work that photograph encourages you to do, and Viv was facilitating that expertly. This photograph is a lot less ambiguous. Is much more straightforward. I mean, there is some ambiguity in it, and the boy at the front, his face is big time ambiguous, but the photograph itself is clear. It's taken in an environment which you can see all the details. So
that's what it is. It's full of detail, but the detail itself takes you to layers and layers of possibility. Yeah.
But as I was facilitating it, though, Viv, I was aware that the same kind of questioning that you were using was not going to be enough. it needed some other kinds of questioning, and looking at the key. There was 2 or 3 questions that I asked that are not in the key. Now, I think the key would work perfectly well without the questions that I asked, but there's in these workshops, one of the opportunities is to kind of riff a little bit on the theme. And one of the questions I asked was about, is there anybody here that causes you concern? Which is
Yeah, that's
a
nice.
question that's kind of obviously asking you to empathize with the people in the photograph. Another one was, what time of day do you think it is? Which kind of occurred to me in terms of just kind of asking a question that is outside what's happening, and you kind of have to use a different kind of thinking to do that. You really have to sort of feel it. As Natalia said, she felt it was early in the morning, but the actual evidence for that is maybe the light or something like that. So it's a different kind of thinking about the photograph. So I'm only saying this because I think when we're in the classroom, the keys will give you the structure. They'll definitely will, and they'll guide you through the steps. But it's also important to be aware, if you like, and just kind of maybe add 1 or 2 other kinds of questions as you're going along to enhance it, just to kind of, if you feel that you need to sort of ask other kinds of questions to get the most out of it. Okay, so how do you feel about that, Viv? That kind of flexibility that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
So that's. Do we need to say any more about that, or should we just carry on and move into the next part?
Just how
Yeah,
intensely engaging it is, because you're ready to move on, and we're talking as teachers, but I'm still going, that boy at the front's got his buttons done up wrong. He must have done that coat up himself. I'm still doing that. I'm still in there. Yeah. So it is intensely engaging.
Yeah.
And I do also want to say that children will spend this long with a photo if you leave them to it. Yeah, I think sometimes we think this is only an adult thing, but I've seen it time and time again. Sorry, Johnny, I talked over you.
No. I was kind of wondering how long the session that I've got is to use this, and I was imagining a stop moment before moving on into another activity, and I think the tension by stopping now and leaving it until we come back into it on another occasion, I think the tension would remain with some of the, I'm thinking about upper key stage 2, that kind of 9, 10 and 11-year-old children I'm thinking of at the moment, and into secondary education as well.
Yeah.
Love that idea of pausing there, because that the image will stay in the mind, as they say, and then you just restart the next lesson by re-showing it, and we're back there, aren't we? We've done the brain will store all that emotional impact. If we went and left this call now and came back in a few days' time, bang, we'd be straight back in. It would be a great part to pause, I think.
Sometimes though, there's something to say for striking while the iron's hot. If you spent like 40 minutes or 30 minutes, I know what you're saying, Johnny. You always keep an eye on the clock, aren't you? And you're thinking, is this a 10-minute activity or is it 20 minutes? But I think for me, I'd want to do this next bit straight after I'd done this and not wait until the next session, because the reason I'm saying this is because having worked, and as all of us have, with older children on occasion, that sometimes for them getting up and stepping into the drama, it can be a difficult thing. It can be a scary thing, and they can be reluctant and don't want to do it. So if they've got engrossed in this, I feel now's the time. Let's do it now while we've got momentum. One of the hardest things I found working, just is going off on a tangent slightly, but the hardest things I found when I did some work in secondary schools was that I'd have these 40-minute or 45-minute lessons, and then I'd come back in a week's time and then try and pick up and I very quickly, you're nodding, aren't you? I very quickly learned that you can't just pick up from where you left off, because there's so much has happened to those young people in the meantime that you really have to spend some time, 10, 15 minutes at the start of the session, getting back to where you were at the end of the previous session. So that's all I'm saying, really. But you judge it based on how well you know the kids and how happy they are to sort of step into a moment, really, which is what we're going to do next. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to write down. I wrote mine this morning on a little strip of paper like this. Just choose one of the children in this picture and write down what they're thinking in their own voice. So what's going through their mind at this point? So you just choose whichever the children you like and just write down. It could be just a couple of words, or it might be a little bit longer. Something that's going through their mind. I'll do the same. Let me know when you're ready. John's ready. So I like this task as a way of I don't know if you've heard the expression that Dorothy Heathcote used to call protecting children into experience. I don't know if we talked about that before, but it's to do with these little tiny steps. So you're breaking down something which is fairly big, because you're asking them to go from talking about it to imagining themselves as being there with these people, as if they are these people. And it's a quite a different state of mind. So one of the things that Dorothy Heathcote recommends, and something that I've learned to use myself, is just to break these things down into small. Each step is a manageable step. There's no big thing about it. There's no I want you to. You don't say that. It's just everything is just a kind of little invitation. So how are we doing? Are we ready? I've just written.
Yeah, sorry, I
I've
had a
just
real problem doing that for some reason.
All right. It's harder. It is quite hard, isn't it? Which is why
It came out so odd. It wasn't what I was expecting, so I've rewritten it. Yep.
So one of the things that I found hard when you did it with us at the previous session was I was thinking, I've got to write this in the voice of the person who's thinking, not my voice. How would and they're not saying it, they're thinking it. So is that different? We don't speak.
And on this occasion, I found it difficult because the first task really was to choose one. And so I spent a good half of that time going, oh, that one, oh, that one, oh, that one. Whereas on my photo, it was like, we're going to be this child. This one, I don't know about others, I actually found it really hard to choose one. So I might even break that step down and say, I'd like you to just choose one of the children first. And now pick up a bit, and then I wouldn't have scanned the others. I would have known which one. So I was in a bit of a panic.
Yeah. No, that's right. And we could have all said, well, let's think about what this lad at the front is thinking. But that felt a little bit obvious to me. And I just felt, let's do a little bit of a variety and see. Yeah. So I'd like you to imagine that we're in a class and the children have all done that. They've all got their bits of paper. And I'm going to say to them, so just see if you can remember what's on the piece of paper. You can take it with you if you like, but just see if you can remember what's on the bit of paper. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to stand up. Just everybody stand up for a minute. Now, obviously, we can't stand up on Zoom because just see our midriff. This next bit, which is not going to be great. But so imagine that we're all standing up, and they'll say, just sort of gather round and let's assemble ourselves a little bit like the people in the photograph. So all I'm going to ask you to do, and you can do it in your seated position, is to arrange yourself a little bit like the person who is saying the thought that you've written down on that piece of paper. So just get your face. There they are. Okay, so you're all just hold it there just for a moment. So imagine they're all now in this kind of tableau, I suppose, of an image. And the convention I'm going to use is that there's a camera. So we're moving now from a photograph into a piece of film. And you might have seen this used in films. As the camera comes past, we're going to hear the thoughts of the person that you're representing. Okay, so what I'll do is, because I can't actually walk amongst you, I'm going to go Viv, Natalia, and John. So just get yourselves back in the image again. Rearrange your faces and get the faces right. And here comes the camera, and we're coming to Viv. We'll
Choose me. I'm tidy and neat, and I'll be good.
We'll go to Natalia.
Will it be any better? It hurts so much, but I cannot let them see my tears. I must be strong. Oh, Mommy, I wish you to be near me.
And then we'll come to John.
Point me in this, Berry. My mother gave it to me, and I'll kill anyone who tries to take it off me.
And we'll stop there. Lovely. Okay.
We were the same one, John.
Were you?
Yeah.
Were you the girl with the beret on? I know John.
Yeah.
Is that what you were as well? Ah, it's so interesting.
Yeah, and the first thing I wrote, and this is so weird, but it was like, they say they're going to choose one of us. Well, I have my own opinions, thank you, is what I first wrote. And then I just thought,
very deep.
I don't know where that came from. I don't want to say that, but that's kind of where I just thought she's quite, yeah, I don't know, it's funny. It shows you the power of it as a creative writing task, because that just came out of me. Like, I didn't choose to write that, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that was quite interesting. And then I didn't want to say it because it seemed so mean to her.
Which does anybody know which one Natalia was? Anybody? Which one?
Were you Sparrow Girl, Natalia? No.
Should I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see the boy on the left wearing the black jacket?
Yeah. And
beside him, there's someone with a bandage, looking like he or she. I don't know who actually he or she is. It's like having a toothache.
Yes, Randy's around there. Yes, I haven't noticed that. Can you see that?
Oh, yes.
Behind the boy who looks like he's looking at his phone, which he obviously isn't. There's somebody standing there with a bandage.
Yeah, I think it was a kind of a habit to put this bandage around the neck.
Yeah.
If you have a toothache. And I was also thinking about this boy or girl, about, like, you know, when you have to leave your country while you're traveling or whatever, and when you have some troubles with your health. I think it's just like, I remember myself having a stomachache while traveling by train. And so I was, and you don't have your mom or dad around. So
yeah.
So, and you can't show that the boys are around. So I think for boys, it's like you cannot let yourself burst in tears. So I think it's like the most, well, when you said that you were still looking at the children, I noticed that boy or girl, yes. And I thought that he or she is the most fragile here in the photo.
I love that, Natalia.
Thank you.
I love that it's one of the big boys that says, "Mummy, mummy, I want my mummy."
Yeah. I still want my mommy when something is bad.
Of course. But it's in his head, isn't it? And it's in he's thinking to himself. He can be vulnerable in there.
Because we are all children. Yeah,
Of course.
Of
it
course.
doesn't matter how old we are.
Absolutely.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I've got the right person there, I think there's a monster on the wall behind him.
Monster?
Yeah, look, a face of a monster. It's up here. This is left of the picture.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's bricks, but it looks like eyes and teeth. And
oh gosh, yes. A face.
Ah,
It's a face. It's a god.
it's a face in the wall.
Yeah, the
Looking
wall.
over the
Oh,
shoulders.
no, I can't unsee that now. Oh,
No.
yeah. It's like
I really just saw it. It's horrific.
it's like, oh wow, that's just blown my mind. That is, because there's it's obviously just the shadows, but that's what our brains do, don't they?
But by heck,
I'm going to need you to share that at some point. I won't hold us up now, but I desperately need to see this monster. I think I can see the area, but
Well,
not at the moment. But I'm
okay.
sure I'll get there. It's like a Rorschach test, isn't it? Don't take up time now, but you can you can tell me about it. Like you can lead me through it later.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wow, that's like one of those you know, Victorian photos where they see that, you know, the ghosts or the fairies, isn't it?
So so we'll pause there. And that is pretty much the end of the key. There's obviously loads and loads you could do off the back of this, and I'm sure you could imagine the kinds of diary writing, or maybe newspaper stories, or there's a whole kind of mantle of the expert that I've done many times off the back of this, which is about finding safe homes for these kids, and going and visiting people who don't want to have the children because we've got too many children, not enough volunteers. It gets into all kinds of issues around health and safety and safeguarding and all kinds of things, and obviously talks about the kinds of decisions that people have to make at times of war. So so that's the key. Viv, did you want to talk a little bit about that second part that we've just done there, and how that works, with the idea of having this piece of writing and then it
Sure. Well, I'm sure the two of you experienced it as well, but it's a shift, isn't it? It's a shift in lots of ways, but from the intellectual exercise through the eyes to the brain to an embodied exercise eventually, where we get up and move our bodies. And again, Tim, as we always say, the experience of doing it, even in my room, I could really feel something shift by moving. I don't know if I'm sure the other two of you did. But once again, I feel that edging towards role through the writing down of the words is something I'm going to do again, because I think often in the past I used to ask children to take the body position first and then think of the words, and then move quite quickly through that. But somehow, particularly for me, I got a little bit anxious about my words and needed a bit of time. So I can see the value there's a lot of value in slowing these steps down. Yeah. So, but it's amazing to think that in a drama experience, it's nearly 50 minutes in before we take on a role. There's an awful lot of steps. I suppose it shows how in dramatic inquiry and in the keys, it's really important to have made an emotional shift from along that continuum of engagement, from being connected to the image to a bit of investment, to do all that before we go into drama, or no, those things are drama, but before we shift our bodies into role. And the other thing I would mention is that Tim's point about standing people up, I've noticed how inviting children to stand is often a sign for, right, we're going to get into that world now. We don't have, curtains and lights to dim. So saying, right, can we all stand, is a signal to the children that we're going into action. So it's quite it is definitely a 2 or 3 part key, and that that shift into the doing is really safe once all those earlier thinking and caring steps have been taken. Is that what you'd say too, Tim?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it again, it illustrates the importance of this dimension of the key, rather than doing it just solely as an inquiry, not just as an inquiry. That seems to diminish it. I don't mean to diminish it, but doing it as an inquiry has great value. But this is another value. This is another quality to it. This is the reason that I got excited when I learned about drama, was because there was another dimension to this, something that I wasn't exploring solely through inquiry. It is affective. It affects you, and you start thinking about it in a very different way. And it's the way that art works, rather than the way that documentary, although documentary often does this now, doesn't it? Modern documentary often does it now, but it's not the way that often we're taught about subjects like the Second World War. We do it dispassionately, we do it objectively, we learn the facts and the people and the dates, but we don't imagine ourselves as those people. What are your thoughts?
And when we do, I had one more thing to say. Sorry, when we do set up a ritual space like that, I think it's also like, I feel quite differently about this photo now, and I feel like there's something held in the air, which is kind of like we've dared to evoke these people, and they're real people, and they, you know, they're sort of haunted, and they're little children. So it's really, really important to do that reflective, where you come out as well, and you say, so what are the limits of this, and what have we got to bear in mind, and, you know, did we take any liberties? I think all that sort of diffuses that ritual as well. You can't just kind of finish after that bit of writing. So I'm sorry to jump in, but I did just also want to say that as well. The reflective and the de-rolling is also important.
Yeah, John, what are your views?
This is like this is like, I feel like this is a sort of a tutorial, or a you know, a seminar, and there's just the four of us. It's luxury for me. That's one of my thoughts. I hope that people get a chance to look at it on the website. The other about the website, you know, I haven't explored it until fairly recently, and it's terrific. And I will now go back to it more than I've had time for so far. And then to go back to the session, the other thing I noticed with the standing up business, and then you adopting the camera role, or the business of walking between the children when you're close to them. And if you know them well enough, if I put my hand on your shoulder, it's time for you to speak if you want to at that moment. Ways of encourage and freeing children to edge into it, which you did with the camera business with us. And I think that gives, and you have to do it sensitively, but yeah, and to allow people not to say anything, depending on, although sometimes you might want to really encourage them to say things, and even put a little tiny bit of teacher invitation into, what am I trying to say? I think, I know what it is, giving permission to people in the room. You talked about protecting them into the drama, which is really clear what you did with us. And then for me, it's about giving them permission to enter into it. And here we were embodying, as you said, Viv. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. The convention is it just makes all the difference. It's weird because I'm just holding my hands, but the fact that it represents a camera, and they are not themselves. They're representing the people in the film. Is a distancing thing. It's a protective thing, isn't it? And it does seem to have a quality to it that's different than if we were just sort of saying, right, let's hear from people. I'm going to walk amongst you and just hear from you. That wouldn't have the same quality to it, I don't think. It wouldn't have the artistic quality, but I think it wouldn't have the protective, the distancing quality to it either. That's my feeling with that. Natalia, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that when I noticed that when when the children they have the rules, it's like a mask. I mean, for Russian children, because the language sometimes is not good, or especially with primary learners, just some basic vocabulary about clothes, colors, animals. So, but when they have mask, they have more language to say, as if probably being just a normal child. Yes, you have some fears, probably, I don't know, but probably you're not you're not really skillful. I mean, but somehow I don't know how it happens, but it's a kind of magic. When they have a role, they have more to say. Yeah.
Inevitably, I've got one more thing to say. May I?
Yes.
I am overjoyed to have this contact with Russia.
Oh,
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
It's like
Yeah, lovely. Okay. So that
yeah, I'm
just,
sorry. Just because
go ahead.
I felt myself being isolated, and I had so many possibilities to heal as people a long time ago. I mean, about Jews, about any people who were ignored, about this, I don't know, Aboriginal people, whatever. Because it's like you have a responsibility for, like, you just personally have responsibility for the whole country. But I think it's like nowadays, I think it's really interesting. I mean, that the life gives me such a possibility to have lots of feelings, emotions, lots of thinking. I started reading a lot about the history, and so I want to say that the mental of the expert, I think, like it's kind of it's a kind of a thing I was gifted to have when I first, like, the British Council was closed in 2018 in Russia, and I was the regional trainer, and I had my third child, and I had a big gap, I mean, of international communication and whatsoever. And then I was in Spain at the time, and then I found this training by team, and that's how I was immersed into that approach, and I started looking for ways to, apply it in my teaching. Yes, and still, I how to say, I struggle with the moments, and especially when my colleagues they ask me like, how do you do this or that? Well, I'm not sure whether I do it right, right or wrong. Sometimes I need some support, and that's why I'm so grateful that you have your books, you have your sites, you have your blogs, so I may know more and I may try. So yeah. So I'm so thankful for it, and I'm sorry for being emotional today, but I was really happy to see you, Tim, again. Yes, and this photo probably, I had lots of feelings about.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I think we all have common history. Yeah, common things to share.
Sure.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Oh,
thank you very much.
So
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hope to join. Yeah.
My job to finish the workshop really, and it's so all I'm going to say is that well, we've had this reflection and discussion section, and we've talked about the planning and how that works, and then yeah, have a go at it when the next time you get the opportunity, try it out, because it's a very straightforward one, and it's one that I've done many times with different photographs. And Viv and I were talking this morning that photographs that or pictures that involve children seem to work particularly well, and that's not something I'd ever thought about before, but it was Viv that pointed that out, and I'm pretty sure that's right.